Hello and welcome to Conversations with Ex-Catholics. I am very honored today to be joined by Rebecca. Rebecca, what's going on?
Not much. How are you?
I'm doing well, thanks. I'm really excited for our conversation today for a number of reasons. But one of the first ones is, and I know I was just telling you this before we went live, is that the biggest critique that I've had of my own show is that I haven't had enough women who grew up trad on my channel, because the experience of women growing up trad, it's just different than the
Yes.
experience of men growing up trad, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
I would definitely agree.
Okay. And I know that a lot of our conversation is going to kind of focus on, I guess, the experience, at least your experience as a woman growing up in the traditionalist movement. And I don't know a whole lot about your experience growing up in the traditionalist movement besides that you grew up FSSP. So,
Yes.
take me to, I guess, wherever you kind of want to start your story. How did you wind up getting involved with the FSSP?
So my dad was like working at our what is like the diocese headquarters basically for Oklahoma City. And at the time, my mom, and my older siblings were all attending Sordo masses because there wasn't Latin mass in the area in 90. I think it was like 94.
Okay.
And so he was working in the diocese center, and there was one really old priest who would always do the Latin mass every morning at the diocese headquarters chapel. And so my dad would like kind of pop in there sometimes. And he kind of fell in love with it because he had been, I guess they'd gone to Latin mass for like 5 or 6 years before it switched to the Novus Ordo in the 60s. So he kind of like remembered it from his childhood and then rediscovered it in his 40s. And when he did that, he found out that there was a Latin mass community in Oklahoma City at like an independent chapel. And then I'm not sure how, but that independent chapel then got taken over by the FSSP. And I'm never going to be able to say that right.
No,
I always try to say FSSP.
I still struggle saying the FSSP, and I say it every day. So no worries at all.
Perfect. So that independent chapel then got taken over by them, and they moved there. And with most FSSP independent chapels, they kind of bounce all over the place. So it was in between that chapel, and then they would go back to the diocese chapel for a while, and then go back and forth. And then I'd say probably when I was like 5 or 6, we actually stayed at St. Michael's Parish in Bethany, Oklahoma. So then from there, we were at St. Michael's until I think I was like 15 when the SSPX is the right acronym, I think. And the FSSP then split, and we went to Edmond with that to the St. Damian's, I think it's St. Damian's Chapel, or it's actually St. Damien. There's no S on it for some odd reason whenever they named it.
So when the FSSP split off from the SSPX, did your actual chapel wind up like splitting into 2 different congregations?
Yes. So
Wow.
there was like, it was a very contentious split as well, from my memory. And of course, at 15, I'm not old enough to know. And so I'm not going to be included on the conversations. And also I'm a woman, so I don't need to know.
Oh, that's
that was
right,
also
of course.
the thing.
Yeah. It's not your decision.
And
let the men folk handle this, right?
exactly. So the only thing that I know is that our priest, like the chapel and the house that was connected for the church, was owned by an independent person. And that was always a problem. But from my understanding, the FSSP does not like to own their own chapels. They always like them privately owned or owned by the diocese, so that they don't have any control over the land for whatever reason. So that was owned by a private person. The priest walked across the parking lot one morning to do mass, and he was locked out of the church. And yeah, it was a big deal. Like, sheriffs were called because technically there was a lease and all this stuff, and we had to sort through all of the records of what was donated directly to the church as a church and what was donated to the FSSP. So it was a huge mess.
And this is all because the individual who owned like the rectory and owned the church wanted to go SSPX?
Maybe.
Okay.
He was a really, really old gentleman who was like, the parish had been there for a very long time, and it was originally an independent parish. And then they invited in the FSSP, and then there were a whole bunch of families. The excuse that I was given was just, oh, there were certain families that wanted more control over running the parish. And
Which is probably
that's
true.
all that I was told.
Okay.
Yes. And then it was kind of like framed as like, well, the SSPX are kind of pushovers, so the parishes have more control because they just get visiting priests. They don't live there. Yeah, and so then we did mass out of it's the Bishop McGinnis High School in Oklahoma City. They had a chapel that we tried to fit in. It was at that time like probably 200 people into like this little high school chapel, so it was a tight squeeze. Style. Yeah, it was a tight squeeze, and it was like over Easter, so that was also super fun. And then they like built what's supposed to become the parish hall that is still not the parish hall 12 years later. It's still the church. And that's how it's going.
Yep. So just to let you know how it happened for us is that there was an independent church that was essentially operating out of an abandoned Protestant church. And so my grandparents and a couple other like people their generation pooled all their money together, and they bought this abandoned Protestant church, and it became an unaffiliated independent Catholic church. And when they got enough of a congregation there, they eventually had a vote to see if they should go FSSP or SSPX, and the FSSP won. But it was close.
It was close.
And there are still people to this day, like people my grandparents' age, like people in their 80s now, who are not friends with each other, like because they voted opposite ways back in the 1980s. So 40 years ago, they voted the wrong way, and so they can't be friends today. It's so petty.
It's a big deal.
You know? Yeah.
And yes, it is ridiculous how petty a lot of these things are. A lot of the arguments.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're growing up kind of in all of this turbulence within the traditionalist movement.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the problem also is because a lot of the families were there when it was independent, and then it switched, and like it started out in another building on the property that was like it was basically like a clubhouse, like a golf clubhouse type thing, and that's where they started. And then I think they built the church on the other side of the property. So yeah, there was a bunch of those people that were very independent. We were running it because that's how we always did it. And then there were the people that are like, no, the priest has to run it because the priest is, the be all end all type of thing. So I think it was just a bad mix.
Yeah. There's definitely like priest worship that goes on in the trad movement for sure.
Yeah, I would agree. There was a couple, it's like priest worship, but also mental health isn't a thing and mental diseases aren't a thing. And so we're going to say like some things that should be warning flags are, oh, that's so great, he's so holy because this or that. And it's like, that's a pretty big warning sign for something else that needs to be looked at.
Are you saving this for later, or can you kind of share a little bit of...
Yeah. So like the FSSP, usually they like rotate their priests every like 3 to 6 years, depending. So I remember like there were 2 before I started catechism class, and then the one that was there that was for my first communion. So like I want to say he was there from like I was probably 5 to maybe like 10. Because for some reason, we always kind of end up having them for longer than they're supposed to be there. So they kind of stick around in our area. And like, I remember one of the moms from the other families had gone and like cleaned his rectory or something and offered to go grocery shopping for him. And he was like, well, I only eat like white bread and apple juice or something like that. And that was like, I was like, oh, it's so holy because it's penance. And it's like, there were some other warning signs with him where he was like super into like doomsday type, like it's the end of the world, and which it's always kind of like that, and like we're about to burn and all this stuff. But he was a bit more. It's like, no, he probably needs some help. And he ended up leaving the FSSP years later and is now in like a it's not a cult, but most people online call it a Marian cult. And so he's still a priest, but he's not affiliated with anybody anymore.
If you have to say it's not a cult, I feel like that's not a good sign.
But we have to say that too. So.
I know. When I say it, I mean it. And then when other people say it, I'm like, well, if you're saying that it's not a cult, that means that it is a cult. And so then people hit me with that too, and I'm like, wait, no, it's different for me. And that's the thing, right? It's not different for you, right? It feels
and that's
different
the thing,
because,
Yeah, my husband grew up like unaffiliated, mostly Methodist kind of thing, and some Catholic. And so he does not understand the level that it was. And we've been watching all these other like Mormon cult documentaries, and he's like, oh, hey, that's you. And I'm like, that's what I've been trying to tell you. There are some scary similarities.
So it's so weird that you say that, because just this morning I actually filmed a video about like the similarities between like the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and the Traditionalist movement. And and I kind of end the video by saying, like, I feel more kinship with ex-Mormons than I do with ex-Catholics who weren't trad, because
and I would agree, because I've been watching like tons of ex-Mormon stuff, because there's more of that than you can find the ex-trads, and it makes a lot of sense.
yeah, and I think it's a numbers game, because there's just so many Mormons in the United States, and there's just not that many trad Catholics in the United States.
Or they just kind of like go Norva Sordo and they don't ever talk about it. And it's just like, we just don't believe that anymore. They're kind of crazy.
Oh, this is kind of an aside, but it's like a related question for you. I was having a conversation today about, do most people who are ex-trad wind up kind of becoming agnostic, or do they mostly wind up going like Nova Sordo and then they just kind of don't talk about their trad past?
I would think agnostic, because it's such like, not brainwashing, but like training that Norva Sordo is completely different. It's basically a different religion, so don't even bother, because they're going to hell, kind of thing. Like,
exactly what
not
I said.
specifically they're going to hell. Like, there might be some good people over there, but most of them are not. So don't even go there. Like, it was to the point where if you were traveling, you should drive way out of your way to find a Latin mass, or just not go at all. And if you did go to a Norva Sordo, like, it was okay, but you should probably pray your rosary the whole time, because it's not really mass. So
yes.
Like, okay, so we're just not believing, but we're gonna say, oh, but we're better than the SSPX because we believe in Rome, but not really.
Right.
It's just confusing.
I know, and it's like, I find that the FSSP is so funny, because like, they're like balanced on the knife's edge in such a way where they're saying like an inch to the left, and that's the Nova Sordo, which is hardly even mass. Like, maybe from like a legalistic perspective, it does fulfill your Sunday obligation, but like barely. So you should be driving,
and only in dire circumstances.
Exactly. But then an inch in the other direction, and that's the SSPX, which, they're not in line with Rome, so you can't do that. And it's like, it's so silly. Like, how specific do we have to be in order to, like, be with the good guys? You know what I mean? Like, it's crazy. Yes. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's a big part of my problem. And it's like, that's part of the problem, is it's like, you can only believe exactly what you're told. But only if it's from the right people.
That's right.
And we only listen to certain things that we like from Rome. So, but they're still the be all end all, but only if we like it.
That's right. Yep. Vatican II? What? I don't remember that.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where it's like so confusing, because it's like, okay, where did this come from? Because in the history of the entire church, we've always had people arguing back and forth, and they were always still okay. But now, ever since 62, you can't do that.
I know. It's so weird. It's so weird. But okay, I think I completely derailed you with my question about do most people, but I feel vindicated, so I'm really happy. But
you can go tell them I told you so, because somebody else agrees.
Perfect. I'm literally gonna link to this video to the people I was talking to. It was in my Discord server, so I'm just gonna link to this video and be like, guys, we were right. Look at that. But so I'm a little interested in hearing more about kind of just, so growing up in the FSSP. I know that so I think the last time that we were talking, like before I interrupted you, I think you were roughly 15 years old. And I know that today you're not a trad Catholic, at least. So I won't spoil the rest of the story, but I'm wondering where you wanted to go to next. And if you didn't have a specific spot that you wanted to go to next, I guess I'd be interested to hear what it was like, not just kind of growing up in the tumult, but also growing up in the tumult as a woman, because that's something that I just don't have the lived experience of.
Yeah. So like before the actual split happened when I was like 15. So all the catechism classes and everything before, they're all taught by volunteer parents, but the priests would not allow any children to receive sacraments unless they had gone to these classes that were done by the volunteers. Unless like you had a specific circumstance, and there were a couple of families that he would like sign out and be like, okay, you're good enough that you can teach the kids yourself. It's like, okay, so either I know enough that I can teach my kids, or you trust these volunteers that you like, yeah, they will pay for some supplies, but they don't pay for the time or anything else. Like the catechism, like the first communion teacher, she's been there for 23 years, something like that, doing it. And like, she's not, they aren't like hiding her in the basement and forcing her to do it. It is of her own free will, but it's like, you are kind of taking advantage of some of these people. And I feel like it's pretty common in the trad circles to kind of guilt people into, because I was in choir for 10 plus years and a bunch of people were, and it was like, oh, well, you've come this far. What else are you going to do with your Sundays and Wednesdays and all your holy days? But also with the choir, if you're a woman, even if you have a family, you are basically not required, but really pressured to be at every single service for Easter week, which is a lot. And
Thursday, Friday,
the
Saturday,
vigil,
Sunday. Yep.
Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then the vigil on Saturday, then Sunday morning. But the guys aren't, because the guys have families. So they need to spend the holidays with their families. Yeah, I'm like, wait, who's cooking up for the holidays though? Because that's also going to be me. So,
the men can't cook.
Yeah, exactly. So just like stuff like that. And especially in like catechism class, it's always kind of like, well, you don't really need to worry about that, because you just need to be there raising your kids. So Jeez. It's like, if you have a question, oh, well, there's this document that says that, so that's why we believe it. But there's not really any like logic to it. It's mostly because somebody else said so, or because we like it.
So I have a question for you. Do you get the feeling that everybody from your chapel was being instructed in this way, or do you get the feeling that it was the girls who were being told, like, oh, don't you worry your cute little head about it. There's a document somewhere. You just worry about raising babies.
So the younger ages, it's kind of the same. And then I don't know, like they do the catechism class is co-ed, but the last class ends at confirmation, which in our diocese is now at like 11 and 12.
Yeah.
It used to be at, I think I was confirmed at 16.
Okay.
No, 15 going into 16. So it used to be older, and then it keeps going lower and lower. And that's the last class. They don't have anything for adults anymore. They haven't had anything for adults since at St. Michael's, just because at St. Damian's, there is no room at all. There's like 2 very tiny classrooms that are attached to the parish hall that is the church. And like the first communion class, I think is like 27 kids, and it is a squeeze to get them in the classroom that they're in. So there is no adult instruction. So last class is catechism or confirmation. So that's as far as I went. And like, but it's also a cultural thing, because women don't ask questions. They don't need to. And so it's kind of like, you're supposed to kind of believe whatever your dad believes, and then you marry somebody and that's what you believe. You just go with whatever male you're tied to. That's what you're supposed to believe. And so like, especially with the catechism class, like I said, it was just a whole bunch of volunteers. So you get like, these people say this set of rules, like specifically no dyeing your hair, because that's like spitting in God's face, saying you don't like the way he made you. Or you should dress like a 50s housewife, because that's the most modest. And this is taught as like a church teaching. And then you're like, but the church doesn't actually have any modesty requirements. and it's just a lot of like that. It's just a lot of people who have different ideas, and then their idea gets taught as this is the rule. And then when you start digging at it, it's like there's actually no basis for that rule at all. And like that modesty requirement, it is given out to the girls, specifically the modesty requirement. And it's like the dress can't go more than 2 fingers below your collarbone, but it probably should cover your collarbone if you want to be like really safe.
Extra
and
holy.
Yeah, absolutely no sleeve shorter than, like a cap sleeve, like right here, but probably to the elbow or 3/4 is better. And your dress has to at least hit your knees, and it should touch the floor when you're kneeling. If it's above your knees, then you're, of course, a whore, and you're going straight to hell, and you're also dragging a whole bunch of people with you.
Oh, of course. Yeah. All those poor innocent men.
Yes. Yeah.
I have a question about the collarbones for you real quick. So I remember like distinctly that if there were girls at my church who did have anything like lower than 2 fingers below your collarbone or whatever it was, they would be forced to take like an old chapel veil and put it under their shirt so that at least there was like the lace coming up to the collarbone.
Well, that wouldn't be allowed either, because lace, you can see through lace, so that's not good enough. Like,
so yes, but I think that was done kind of as a shaming technique.
So yeah, I don't remember anybody being told like, here, adjust your dress right now. It was always like somebody from just a random person from the parish would pull aside somebody, and it was usually somebody who was just there for like, first time, and they were told like, that's completely inappropriate, don't come back dressed like that. Yeah. And you're like, okay, so wait a second, what happens if this is just somebody who was like traveling through, or somebody who is interested, or somebody who doesn't have any, like this is the best thing that they have? And of course, it was never anything like super horrible. It was always like their dress was a little too tight, or it was a little too short, or maybe the cut on the front was a little bit too low. And you're just like, okay, so now what if they don't even go to a North Sordo church? Then like, just because somebody was super mean to them and was super judgmental. I never understood that. But especially if you went to the church, you knew what the rules were, and you would be talked to personally, or your parents would be talked to and been like, you need to really get that under control. That's not allowed.
Jeez. You get that from the pulpit ever too? Like,
oh, all the time.
Yeah.
All the time. And then there would be like little side comments and be like, yeah, people always complain that we're always picking on the women for modesty, but we pick on the guys too. Like, we don't let them come to church in shorts. And you're like, wait a second. That is not the same thing. That is not the same. Yeah. And so back to like the modesty rules, like that was given out in the confirmation class, and probably before too, but it was like really hit on in the confirmation class. And like it was suggested that you should probably also wear tights all the time. You really shouldn't show any of your legs at all. And especially if your dress doesn't go all the way to your ankles. And like the stupidest thing, I don't remember if this was like specifically taught, but toe cleavage was a thing. And like, you probably shouldn't wear shoes that like cut off your toes. And so they look like cleavage.
What?
Yes.
Are you
and
serious?
If you did, you really wear tights. Yes.
Okay, so hold on. Toes were immodest?
Yes. And I don't remember this ever being taught in like catechism class, but it was like there were certain families that would talk about it, and then it just kind of like spread. And I've been talking to like people who are a little bit older than me, and I found out that I grew up in like the super, super crazy section of the parish. So that's great for me. And like, but the weirdest thing is that these rules weren't at our house. These were for church, and then like the specific families that we knew of that were like this outside of church, we had to dress right to go, like if we went over for dinner or something. And so it's like a whole bunch of these people who just, I mean, not a whole bunch of people. I know some people would like follow the rules and do everything on Sunday, and then if they're not at church, then they're dressing however they want to dress. I mean, still relatively extremely conservatively by the world standards, but not to the same degree. But then you also have the families who won't let their boys and girls swim together because the brothers are going to then lust after their siblings. But also the girls still have to wear, like, there are literally swimsuits that are like, they're like the spandex bodysuit, yep. But then they have a dress over the top, a literal dress over the top. But if you don't have enough money, because those are like $100 a piece, if you don't have enough money, you can make do with like a giant t-shirt, but also once that's wet, then you're still sinning. So
right.
It doesn't matter.
You probably could tell I'm getting like so angry while you're
getting flashbacks.
You're unlocking memories for me that I've clearly repressed because I like wasn't remembering them until now. And I think that I was partially like saved from some of this stuff in the sense that out of the 11 of us between my cousins and us, there's one girl and 10 boys. And the one girl was almost the youngest out of the whole family. So like she kind of just had like almost like a different upbringing than the rest of us did. But I remember like not being like, I remember being at other people's pools and like going in shifts, like the boys and then and the girls. And I also distinctly remember the absolute scandal of one.
Did somebody wear a one piece, Kevin?
No. It was a 2-piece. But it
was a tankini, so it covered it all.
But it was the straps. So the shoulder was exposed.
How many people like were smitten or like smoten from heaven at that pool party?
I can't confirm, but a few dozen at least, I'm sure.
Okay. Okay. Good.
But it was seriously like it was the scandal of like having like a spaghetti strap tankini was like unbearable and stuff. Just geez.
You don't no. Just if you want me to make it worse, how about the absolute moral crisis of is it okay to buy a tankini to go under your modesty swimsuit? Okay, because you're spending your money on immoral things, Kevin.
Wow. And see, this is, I don't think I was aware of that moral quandary of just supporting the tankini industry.
Yes.
Which is, I'm sure, is like, a dozens and dozens of dollar industry, the tankini industry.
You could never even think about buying a bikini for underneath, okay?
Oh,
but
no,
you probably should still wear something underneath just in case.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that there would be like rumors about like, oh, did you hear that like somebody like wore a bikini? But like, of course, it was never like around
when they went to the beach around by themselves. There were all those people on the beach that were also wearing bikinis that were just suddenly going straight to hell.
Right. Yeah. It's so wild. If you don't mind, can I pull up a few comments real quick about the toes? So my friend Anthony, whoa, toe cleavage. And hold on, where was the one about there was one about the conspiracy theory. The trads are responsible for online foot fetish trends. Probably.
I would say probably also because of they're so repressed by everything that yes, toes turn them on.
Oh, well, so that's something that at least, and I wonder if anybody else in the comments wants to chime in here, but I definitely had like a super skewed, like I found things like when I was 17 or whatever, I found things like sexy that today I look at, I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yes.
Like, that's a problem.
Just admit it, Kevin. You agree that elbows look like boobs, and so every time you see somebody in a short sleeve shirt, you are can't control yourself.
No, 100%. No, but I mean, I distinctly remember even thinking just like, things like jackets that like would like cinch around the waist and stuff like the most innocent stuff, and like that's got to be a sign of some like severe like repression. And
yes, I would. And for people who are like, so don't think about sex, don't do any of this, they're sure they think about it a lot.
Nobody thinks about sex more than the tribes do. That's the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I would agree. I know that I was the last confirmation class that was allowed to wear sandals, and it was probably
because of the toe
I like
cleavage.
to think it was probably because I wore sandals that had heels on them, so it was probably my fault.
So scary. You ruined it for everybody else.
I did. So now they're required to wear closed-toed shoes and hose, and also their dress should probably be at least ankle length for to be confirmed.
Jeez.
Yes. Yeah.
Jeez.
And I forgot, there's also a wedding dress committee, and you have to get your wedding dress and all your bridesmaids' dresses approved and signed off on by at least, it's like, I think the committee is like at least 3 women from the parish that are on this committee before you can schedule your wedding at the church. I did not get married at this church. At the Northern Sordo church that I went to, the priest was just like, I mean, I like it to have straps at least, hopefully, but you know, whatever.
Yeah,
I trust your judgment. You'll be fine. And the dress I ended up wearing would not have flown at St. Damian's.
How did your family take you getting married not at
it was fine because we liked him. Because he did the Latin Mass sometimes. So it was fine.
Okay. All right. I'm glad that worked out. Wow.
Yeah. And that's the whole problem. Because it's like some Northern Sordo parishes we like because we think the priest is, you know, reverent enough or you know, their personality is good enough or they're fine with the Latin Mass. So they're okay, but everybody else is wrong.
That's right. It's like pick and choosy, you know?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So if you don't mind, we talked.
Right, we got the real by toes.
Yeah, I mean, well, not only the toes, but also the elbows, which of course look like boobs. Moving beyond elbows and toes, just for a brief moment, we'll come back to the elbows and toes. I'm interested to hear. So you got married in a Catholic church.
Yes.
And this wasn't a super long time ago, just 4 years.
No, so we got married in 2020, and the reason that we went to Northern Sordo was because the traditional church would not do the. So my husband was like baptized, and I think that's as far as he went. So he was a Navy brat, and they kind of bounced all over the place. And his parents were interfaith, and so it was kind of like a mix of both. And so the farthest he went was baptism, and then like he never made it to First Communion. So he had to do RCIA, of course, before he could be signed off on to be married in the Catholic Church. And the only church that would help him, because he worked in the oil field and could not be at like actual in-person meetings, was this Northern Sordo parish that we had already had a relationship with the priest, like my family did. And they were fine with it because we liked that priest. So that was the only place that could help him do the RCIA. And so he did the First Communion and confirmation and everything through them. And that's where we ended up getting married because he had already, like, all of his records were already at that church.
Cool.
But funnily enough, I had gotten baptized at that church by the Archbishop whenever I was a baby. It was like a weird thing because my dad had worked in the diocese center, and he was, you know, kind of friends with the bishop or Archbishop, because Oklahoma City is like a hub there. And so he was like kind of friendly with the Archbishop and just asked him one day, he was like, "Hey, I've got a kid coming if you want to baptize her." Like,
actually, the Archbishop. That's cool.
Yeah. And so the Archbishop was like, "Yeah, that's fine, but I don't want to do it here at the diocese. I'm going to be at like this super, like, it will hold 50 people and it's busting at the seams, tiny little chapel." Wow. That's like an hour north of the diocese center. And so he's like, "Yeah, I'm going to be out there this day. How about that for your baptism day?" So I was baptized by the Archbishop.
That's awesome.
And yeah, and so that church was tied into there. It's like a sister chapel that's run by the same. There's only one priest, so he goes back and forth. And so like my baptism records and everything were already there. So we're like, okay, fine. I guess we'll just switch over here.
And how was pre-Cana? Because you did pre-Cana through the Novus Ordo Church.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So was it normal pre-Cana? Like, was it fine?
It was fine. I don't know.
Okay.
It was not what the traditional pre-Cana was, I'm sure. And
there were, I did
like the priest.
So.
Yeah. Well, the priest had like a list of like topics, and you know, cover your ears, but sex was on the topic list. And it was like, you know, what are your ideas of? Yeah, right. I mean, no lie, like there was zero sex ed, at least in my family, and it was common for none to be done in the parish.
Yep.
Yeah, and so, and to even think about talking about like what your ideas are, what your proposed limits would be, or what you're comfortable with, that would be a hard no ever. You're
not.
dating, that's horrible. That's
Right.
near occasion of sin. You got to
Right.
stay right away.
There's no reason to talk about it because you're never going to get that. Like you're not even going to come close to that. You know, you're never not going to be not chaperoned. You know, so
of course not.
Yeah.
There were like so many talks and like, you know, the traveling priest speakers and all of that stuff. And like so many talks about, you know, you better be chaperoned, and it's best if you're chaperoned by a tattletale younger sibling. Like all of these other things.
Really?
Yes, because your siblings are gonna tattle. And so they're not a friend that you can bribe, Kevin. You can't trust your friends.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Sorry, I had to pull this one. Freaking out with all that sex talk is a near occasion of sin.
Yeah, no, and it wasn't even, it was just like a very like surface level, like just what is your idea and what do you like, it was like what frequency do you think you're gonna want or something like that, and if you guys are at if you guys have different ideas, then you need to figure out a way to talk to each other and actually figure something out. It's not just, you know, the husband doesn't just get to say that this is what I want, so this is what we're doing. And that's kind of what the whole topic list was all about. It was all about these different little things where somebody might have a slightly different idea, and you've got to talk together and make an actual collaborative effort, not just somebody making a shots call and saying it's my way or the highway.
Good. So it was a pretty positive experience then.
Yeah.
Okay. Good.
Yeah, and there were a whole bunch of videos that went along with it, and like each week we were supposed to watch so many videos, and then there was like a topic list for each video. And then we would like come in and the priest would be like, so did you go over the topic list? And we're like, yeah, we already talked about all this before we got engaged. So like, we kind of, you know, we already kind of did this. So, and he's pretty, I mean, I really like him as a person, and he is very easy to talk to. And so I never had any issues with him. He was definitely not a trad priest. And because I think with like, especially the trad priests, they're always supposed to be separate. And like at St. Damian's, we would have like a senior priest, and then we were kind of like the training ground for all the new priests. And so they were kind of like shuffle through. And so he would have like, he had lists or rules for his subordinate priests. Like you weren't really supposed to go have dinners with your families, because if you like then have more dinners with one family, then they're like a favorite family, and that's going to cause drama with all the parishioners.
That's very different than my chapel, because there was a war among the families to like who could have the priests over for dinner the most, because, you know. And
your chapel is probably the one that ruined it for everybody. Probably. And that's what like that's what it used to be. And there was, you know, like the priests before, there would be like families that they would go to, you know, more often, which makes total sense. You have people that you get along with more or whatever. Like, and that's where it's kind of like the pettiness is super annoying, because then you have all these people with like, well, my calendar says that he only came over one time last year, and he was at so-and-so's house 3 times. And like, there's one priest to like 500 families. It's ridiculous now. Right. Yeah, so that wasn't, and so like, especially with like the priest kind of worship that goes along, it's like, oh, well, we can't really talk to them about everything. We should only talk about church topics and, you know, this. And like, maybe sometimes we can talk to him about how he thinks does he think that the Pope is really the Pope, but we're not really going to breach it because we still believe in the Pope kind of thing. Yep. So it was just, yeah. So it was a very different experience. And if we went through pre-canon with the traditional, we probably wouldn't have made it to get married. Because at the end, like my husband's lease was up before we got married. And so he ended up just moving in with me for like the last 2 months, but he worked away, Kevin. He was in the oil field. So he was only there for like 3 nights a month or something. And the priest was like, I mean, yeah, he has his own bedroom. I don't really care. Like, just, you know, try and do the best that you can, but it's kind of the situation that you have. So yeah, that would not have gone. And like that was a huge crisis point for my family, specifically my sister. She was like, "Oh, you never would have done that. You're changing so much." And I'm like, there's a lot of things I never would have done that I do now, or that I just said that I believe to get along, to go along, because that's what I had to do. So
okay, so your family...
it's a lot of like, well, the whole parish. It's a lot of, you have to perform what the rules are, and then you can believe whatever you want in your own time, but just don't you dare say it.
Yes, trad culture is a very performative culture where like your social capital very much depends on how holy you can perform, and not just holy, like it's you know, it's a very specific kind of brand of holiness.
Yes.
Too, where it's
yeah.
So your family was still, I mean, so your family was trad enough that they were mad that your husband moved in with you before you were officially married, even though he's working in the oil fields and he's gone so much. And so, and it sounds to me like, you know, please correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds to me like this is kind of like you are definitely kind of becoming more and more de-radicalized as time goes on. But your family
the big problem is that I had a job. I went out and got a job.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I thought you were a woman.
And it wasn't, okay, there are like 3 jobs for women, Kevin. There is...
That's true. Nursing,
well, not really
teaching.
daycare, because daycare, you're allowing women to not be at home. So daycare is like kind of frowned on. If you're a live-in nanny for a family that has 12 kids, then that's okay. But not like a standalone daycare.
Right.
Which I worked at a daycare too, so...
Just breaking all the rules.
Yeah, you could be in like a nurse or a hospice care, but you should probably be hospice care because you can wear like the scrub skirts, not the actual scrub pants. Which, if it is your job, you can wear pants, but you should lobby for them to change the rules so you can wear a dress.
Jeez. Wow. Yeah.
So you have hospice or care nurse. You know, child care help for a mother, so mother's helper. Or what was the other one?
We viewed teachers as being okay. For whatever reason, we were like, okay, like if you were like a kindergarten teacher or something. No,
because you should be homeschooling. Except now you don't have to homeschool your boys because there is a boys' school that is not affiliated or run by the church, but it's like blessed by the church. So that's okay. But you should be homeschooling as long as there's not a church school. Yeah. So there were only a couple. So, or like a vet tech was kind of okay also, but as soon as you got married, you got to quit.
Oh, of course. Because now it's baby time. Baby time.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. So I was working at daycare, and I worked in like a hotel, and you know, a whole bunch of places there were not Catholics. That was my first problem.
Yeah.
So you really shouldn't talk to people. And that was the other part of the problem is like, you can't have friends that aren't Catholic. And if you do, it should always be with the understanding that you're trying to get them to become Catholic. And if they're not going to, then you should probably just cut it off because it's dangerous. Because otherwise you might not be, like you might fall away. So you shouldn't talk to them if you don't have to.
The insular nature of trad communities is wild. Like the fear of you becoming secularized is like an ever-present fear, to the point where it's like you're not allowed to have secular friends.
No, you can't even have North Sordo friends. Okay.
Yeah.
So I grew up, there was like a whole bunch of girls, not a whole bunch. There was like 10 to 12 girls my age, and there were no boys. So there was like 2 eligible guys for like this, as like a 6-year span of girls. Okay. So there's only a couple people. But you can't go to a North Sordo parish to try to find a husband because they're not trads. So they're not good enough. Okay. So there's that. And then, but you also can't do online dating because that's also evil.
Wait, what about
except the Catholic match is where I met my husband. But you have to be careful because there's awful North Sordos on there, Kevin.
Oh, dangerous. Is there like a trad filter? So
there is not because I had this one guy who was like arguing with me that I think it was like Ethiopian rite or something. He was saying it was the exact same as the Latin rite, like the mass and everything is the same. I'm like, no, you don't understand. There's like 24 approved rights or something, but they're different. And mine's the right one. You don't understand.
And you're
So
having
no,
this
there is
argument
not
on
a
Catholic
filter.
Match?
Yeah,
That's,
there's
like,
not
so
a filter.
ridiculous.
Yes.
I love it.
Yeah, so then you would have like a whole bunch of people who would like put like right under their profile like trad or Sordo or OnlyTrads or whatever. So yeah, there was like
OnlyTrads. It's the new, oh dear, never mind.
it's not like
Never
OnlyFans.
mind.
It's for toe pictures only. Kevin.
Only toe cleavage and elbows.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So my sister and I had like joined this. It was like a young adults group, and they would go around to different parishes, and they would go to, of course, the Nova Sordo parishes because that's all that was in our area, and we were like the one. We're the one Latin mass for like 2.5 hours that's affiliated with the diocese, or approved by the diocese, and so they would like when they were doing their traveling, they would come to our parish like every whatever their schedule was. It would have to be like every couple of years or something. And like, it was okay to kind of join that group with the intention of like trying to find somebody and then like convert them over to the Latin Mass if you're going to get married to them. You couldn't go the other way. But also they would always kind of be like a little bit suspicious because they were Nova Sordo originally. So yeah, it's just a whole bunch of we marry our own and that's it.
Yep. My parents both attended the church that my grandparents founded.
Mm-hmm.
But my uncle married a Nova Sordo Catholic. I know. And all my cousins attend the trad church. But they have cousins like on their mom's side who attend the Nova Sordo. And like, I remember like asking my parents about that growing up. Like, why don't my cousins attend the, like why do they go to Our Lady of Good Counsel instead of Our Lady of Fatima? And
because they don't know better.
Exactly. It was like a point of shame. It was Kevin, they're going to what they think is the best, and if they knew how good the trad movement was, and the elite is.
And nobody leaves the church if nobody would leave if they actually knew.
That's right.
They just don't know any better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're just.
But also,
stupid.
the only answers that you're going to get is because we said so.
That's right. Yep. Oh man. Okay. So, I've got a question for you if you don't mind.
Yeah.
We've gotten to like you're an adult, and I think where we kind of left off with the story is that like you're still Catholic. And probably even still trad, you just have, you have Nova Sordo tendencies, such as working. Today, I understand that your personal views might not be the same as they were like 4 years ago. Can you walk me through a little bit of like kind of like where your head's been at over the past like 3 or 4 years or whatever?
Yeah. So. See what year is this? 2024. Yeah. So in 2019 is when my husband and I started dating, and then we got engaged June, July, August, September, November. We got engaged like 4 months after like meeting, and then we had to be engaged for 6 months before we could get married.
Yep.
And it's like if we didn't have all these rules, we would have probably gotten married earlier because it was. Like both of us knew within like the first conversation, we're like, okay, I guess this is right. But of course you can't, but that's also like a very trad thing, but not like if you date anybody, you better see a future with them. You can't just casually date, and you can't date until you're able to be married.
Right.
So no dating before 18 at the very least. And if you're a guy, you should probably own your own home. Like renting's okay if you have to. Okay. But you should own your own home, and you should have a job that can sustain a wife and multiple children without her working.
Okay. I will say that that's going to be a cultural difference between... So I grew up in New Jersey, and just home prices in New Jersey are kind of crazy. So yeah. We kind of viewed it
They're kind of like letting up on that because of the price. But it's
interesting.
And it wasn't ever like a rule, but it was always taught as you have to be available and you have to be able to provide. And being able to provide means owning it. so that if you lose your job or something, like you would be able to handle 1 or 2 mortgage payments, but you wouldn't probably be evicted like you would if you're renting somewhere.
Right. So definitely the no dating under the age of 18 was absolutely the case. For my family, the rule was actually no dating until after college. Like you have to be like,
Oh, we don't do college, Kevin.
okay, so there were a lot of families like that at my chapel, but my dad is an engineer. My dad has a mechanical engineering degree. So like he was big on college for me and my siblings, and my cousins and stuff like that all went to college. Other families though looked down on us for going to college.
Okay, so definitely if you're a girl, you really don't need college unless, like I said before, you were going into those nursing.
Yeah.
But even then, you probably shouldn't waste your time because you're going to quit as soon as you get married. But with nursing, you could at least like that could be a fallback if your husband ever died and you had to feed your kids.
God,
you could still like re-up your license. But you really shouldn't go to college for anything else because the debt, and you won't need it anyway. Like maybe a teaching degree because you are going to be homeschooling, but it's not necessary.
Right.
And so, and like I do agree there are a lot of problems with student loans and all of that, and going to school for something that isn't necessary. If you are going to take on all this debt and you're not actually going to get any use out of it, yeah, I'm probably going to, talk to my kids and not recommend they do certain things if they can't afford it. But it was very like trade school is the only way to go unless you might go to school for medical, and maybe a lawyer and maybe an engineer. And again, you had to probably be a man to do that.
Of course.
Because otherwise it was ridiculous. And then I get another job. I like work at a hotel and all this stuff. And then I get a job. And I didn't get married until I was 20. I turned 25 the year that I got married. So I was, getting up there. I was getting pretty old. And so I had a job at this one company for like 3-ish years, and I was like making my way up. And at that point it was like, okay, well maybe you could, like, if you wanted to, if you thought a college degree might help you and you don't have any marriage prospects, you could think about going to college for something. But really don't put your eggs in that basket. You should be working harder at finding a husband.
All that time that you're studying, you're really wasting that time studying when you should be trying to, like, find a husband, right?
Yes.
Jeez Louise.
Yeah. Yeah. And so like, it was just understood that you wouldn't go to college if you're a woman unless you just knew that you were never going to get married. Or if you felt called to the single life, then you could maybe think about it, but only if you could really pay for it out of pocket. You probably shouldn't take out any student loans or anything like that. So college was not a thing. Yeah. And military was also definitely not a thing. You can't go to the military to pay for your loans and all that.
I'm trying to think if there were any military like families. So my uncle was in the Air Force, and my grandpa was actually in the Army too.
If they already were in the Air Force or whatever before they came to the trad mass, that's fine. They could keep their career and everything. Just for the young kids, you can't go to the military because the government's evil, and so you just can't do that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess now that I think about it, I actually don't know if there was like anybody my age who went to the military, and it is probably because like you would be exposed to like secular people, and like. Sure, you could go to mass on Sunday, but nobody's going to be breathing down your neck forcing you to go to mass when you're just like living on base or whatever. Like it's like go or don't. Nobody's going to care.
And also the chaplain would probably just be your run of the mill Protestant chaplain. So
they wouldn't have like a Catholic specific chaplain.
It just depends. I mean, I'm sure if you're deployed somewhere, you may not have access to that, and so then that would be another problem. Is you don't actually.
So I didn't mean to interrupt you. Colin went to the same FSSP church that I did, and Colin confirms that there were military people. I just must not remember them, but okay.
No, I know that there were people that were in the military, but it was like they didn't come to the FSSP until they were already like in and commissioned and all this other stuff. Okay. And so then it was a career path for that person from then on. Military to
FSSP, but you can't go from the FSSP to the military, kind of.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. And like I said, I kind of was in like the super weird side, I guess. and it was just odd. Some people were okay with it and some weren't. And so if you didn't agree with them on everything, then they were just dead to you.
Right. Okay, but so I forget how we wound up getting on the whole military thing, but can you kind of take me to I guess just over the past couple of years, like
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
No, all good, all good. I think this was my fault. I'm pretty sure all of these diversions have been me. I'm just like asking weird questions and stuff.
Yeah.
I'm a really bad interviewer if you can't tell.
That's fine. I get distracted very easily.
We're on the same page.
But ADHD isn't a thing, so we're not going to talk about it. Yeah, so I was FSSP, and then my husband had to do RCIA through the Norfolk Sordo place, and then we got married through there, and then we started going over there. Excuse me. And we ended up switching. So there was like a larger parish that was with that priest, and then he, like I said, he did that smaller, like really, really tiny. It's basically like a country parish kind of thing. It's a whole bunch of farmers and that kind of thing. And so he would do the same, both churches on Sunday. So we ended up going to like the smaller parish because it was just a better time fit, and we liked the smaller aspect of it. It was more like community oriented. Like you knew everybody there, and they would always do like a big breakfast for everybody. And it was like potluck type of thing. So we were going over there, and then so my husband worked in oil field, and he was working out of like West Texas, New Mexico area. So he would be gone for weeks at a time. And he had the opportunity to transfer to where he was only supposed to be working like an hour or two away from home versus the 9 to 12 hours that he was in New Mexico. Yes. And so we transferred up to Pennsylvania, and we never really found a parish that we liked. The nearest Latin Mass parish, I want to say, was like an hour and a half away from where we were. And like there were a couple Norfolk Sordo parishes, but there's not many. There's not a huge, like we were in Central PA, and just the area that we were, there weren't a whole lot of options. So we had never found a parish that we really liked. And then he was working over, so he would work anywhere from like 2 weeks at a time to 3 months away was his longest time period. And at this time I had she was like 1 until she was about 2.5 as long as we were there. And the parish that we were at, there was, I think, one family with another toddler, and that was it. Everybody else was like super old. Oh, wow. So there were a couple older families. Yeah. But they were like, their kids were all like 16 plus, I would say. There was just nobody there. Yeah. And so like going back to like the catechism classes and stuff, there's never a discussion of like, do you actually believe this, or do you want to proceed? Do you want to get confirmed? Do you want to do all this? It's just, you believe it and you're going to do it. Because otherwise, I mean, you're living in my house, so you're coming to church every Sunday and you're just going to do it. So sucks to be you if you don't believe. And if you don't believe, then that's a whole scandal and that's a whole problem. And you got to do meetings, I'm sure, intervention type level stuff.
I had to do that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and see, and I'm sure it is different because, again, I'm a girl, so I'm not supposed to have opinions. And so it's just never thought of either. And you are taught to really people please a lot as a girl. And so I definitely did that a lot. And so like when I've been thinking back about it, I don't know if I ever really did believe. Like I kind of think I did around like first communion kind of age, but the rest of it was kind of like go along to get along kind of thing. And so I think moving to Pennsylvania and moving away from everybody really did help that people pleasing side of me, because it's like they can't show up at my house. That's right. like nobody's gonna knock on my door and be like, you weren't at church on Sunday, what's wrong with you? And also just not really having community and just kind of like, okay, I'm going to Norfolk Sordo Parish, so I go there and I sit there and I think about how evil all of these people are, and I might as well not even be here because they're wrong. And like I had gotten over that because I was going to an okay Norfolk Sordo Parish in Oklahoma, and then like really sitting with those kind of thoughts in Pennsylvania, and it's like, wait, it's not just that I don't believe in the Norfolk Sordo. I don't think I believe in any of it. And I don't have to now. Like, I can actually sit here and think about what I actually believe and what I actually think. And so that was, and that was several conversations with my husband as well. It's like, okay, I feel really bad because when we met, I was super like hardcore, like, no, you have to
Right.
go through RCIA and you have to eventually come to the FSSP because that's the only way.
Mm-hmm.
And that's also really hard for him because it's like, okay, now like all of my parents' worst fears are coming true, and they're going to think it's your fault because I did it wrong. And I really kind of feel bad about that. And they don't think that, but that was a big worry for both of us, is like, because I know when we first met, and that was like a huge problem for several of my older parents and other people. It was just like, well, he wasn't raised the same way as you, so he's not going to believe the same thing, so it's just really dangerous and this and that. And then it's like, well, sorry, all your worst fears did come true, but not for the reasons you think. I just never believed it. And he's actually like, we actually talk about it, and it wasn't just like, well, what I say goes. It was more like, well, what do you actually think? And you don't have to agree. We can have healthy disagreements about things.
A healthy relationship.
It's super weird. Yeah, I didn't know those existed.
Unheard of in the trad community. Yeah. And I joke a little bit here, but I can speak firsthand. It is hard when my parents did not like my wife for they were like,
it's difficult.
Yeah, she was excluded from, like, we had been dating for 5 years, and like she still wasn't being like treated as if she was like part of like our lives or anything like that.
Well, of course not, because dating isn't exclusive. So you should actually be dating multiple people, because unless you're betrothed, and you have to be betrothed, not engaged, they are different. And unless you are committed, and you can't be, why were you dating for 5 years, Kevin? That's another big part of the problem.
That's right.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And my parents at one point told me, like, oh, why don't you date so and so from a girl from the chapel? Like, after I had been with the woman who became my wife for a couple of years, and I got mad at them, and they didn't understand why I was mad. They're like, why are you mad? Like, you're just dating. Like, you should be dating multiple people, because like that's the whole point of dating.
But also, you shouldn't. Because a date shouldn't go past the first or second date. If you don't decide by then that you're going to marry them, you need to cut it off and just move on. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just
so you have all of those it's ridiculous. And then you have all of these families who are being run. Like, I can't think of more than like a handful of people who I would say have an actual healthy relationship where they talk about it. And it's a problem of being raised on the woman's side like we are taught that we don't have opinions. And if we do, we still have to just like kind of roll over and do as we're told. Because, we're not the head of the family. So we can't make those decisions, and we can't really have a problem with it if our husband makes that decision. And so you have a lot of these, specifically women, who have like this huge martyr complex of, oh, I don't really agree, or I don't like doing it, but I'm just going to do whatever because that's what I'm told to do, or that's what he likes, so that's what we're going to do. And so that, I wouldn't consider most of the relationships there happy or healthy relationships. And then you have all of these guys who are, told to get married at 18, and then they got to figure out that, oh, well, now I have a wife that I'm responsible for, and however many kids that come along, and all of this other stuff. So you just get all these people who are then stuck with, now I have 5 kids, my wife doesn't work, and we just got to stay here because this is the place that told me that I had to do all of these things, so they're going to be there to help me. And everybody else is kind of in the same boat, so everybody else understands what I'm going through, kind of thing. But also, we don't talk about it.
Right.
It's just understood.
A trap. It's a trap. It's like the whole system is designed to
get you stuck in it.
Yeah.
And you can't think of, and you can have questions, but they're only approved questions.
That's right.
And only about a couple things. And if you actually disagree, then you better keep it to yourself.
You're allowed to ask the question as long as you get back in line after I've given you my canned response.
And you can only ask questions about certain things, though. Yeah.
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 Mm-hmm.
Yeah, man. So much of what you're saying is like ringing true. Like I'm sad in the sense that my FSSP chapel sounds like it was a lot like your FSSP chapel.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's where, like, recently there have been several young couples who have gotten divorced, and that was like almost world ending.
Whoa.
And like neither person still goes to that church. But it's like, I feel like that's the kind of culture though that you're bred into, is if you find somebody, it better be like the first person that you date and that you took out more than a couple times. You better be getting married as soon as possible. You better be having kids as soon as possible. And, you know, all of these things, all of this pressure on these people, and you don't have any experience. Like, you do not hang out with the opposite sex at all until you're dating. So you have no idea how to deal with the opposite sex. And like, going backwards, like, there were families that would not allow their cross-sexed older children to change younger children's diapers, because then they might have problems if they see genitals of the other sex. And you're like, you have way bigger problems if that's what you're worried about. You have serious problems if that's something you're worried about in your family. And it was just like, no, we're just saving them from possibly sinning by even thinking about it.
Like, that's
But at the same time, okay, when I have kids, I've got to change another kid. Like, I've got to change a diaper. I've got to know how to do that. But also, if you're a man, you want to change diapers anyway. And so it's just like so many problems like that. And you don't talk about anything at all, ever. And so you have these kids who are then getting married and getting all of these pressures then piled on top of them, and they don't know how to deal with that. And another big part of me leaving was like thinking about what's going to happen to my kids and the rules that I want for my kids. And it's like, I think when I was like 10 or 11, there was a girl who was she had to be like, I think 7 years older than me, because she was almost 18. She got pregnant, but nobody really talked about it, and she adopted out her kid. And it was always talked about as like, oh, that's such an amazing gift. That's so wonderful that she did that to somebody. But we don't talk to her because that might wash off on you. It's somehow like kind of a bad, what do you call it? Like influence,
right?
Type thing.
Do you think that was her choice to adopt out her kid, or do you think that she was told, like, you will be adopting out this kid?
I don't think she could have made any other choice in the type of environment that we had. I don't know if she was like explicitly told that, but she definitely was shunned.
Oh yeah.
And I don't think she could have made any other choice. And this is from the same parish that I was out in front of the abortion clinic in the town at 8 through 14, like at the 40 Days for Life thing. These are the people that were there. It was like so anti-abortion, but as soon as anybody got in that situation, it was like swept under the rug. Like, we don't talk about that. That doesn't happen here. And like, I remember other people, it was like, you cannot have a baby shower for an unwed mother, because then somebody else is going to think it's okay, and then they're going to get pregnant so that they can have a party. I'm like, are we that shallow as women that we just want a party? And then we want 18, we're going to tie ourselves down for 18 years just to get a party? Like, that's ridiculous.
But that is the conception of what being a woman is in these trad cultures. Like, women we're shallow, but we're also
silly and
they're shallow. Yeah. And you know, let the men do the thinking, and let the women have their little parties and stuff.
Yes.
It's disgusting.
But it's like, at the same time, it's like, okay, I'm still pro-life. because I don't know where, you know, it becomes a person. And to me, the only logical place is we can take it, you know, back to conception. However, I had, and this was another problem, like I had friends of mine who weren't Catholic who like confided to me that they had had abortions at their, when they were younger, when they were stuck and they made it out of desperation. And it's like the majority of women who get an abortion is because they don't see another way. They don't see how they can do it. And yes, we did have a couple of like services we would refer to if we were able to get somebody at the abortion clinic to walk away. But it wasn't a lot, and it wasn't through the church. It was some other charity that had set it up. And it's like, okay, if you want to actually help these people, we're not actually helping them. And if they made the choice to keep their baby, they wouldn't really be welcome at church because they're being a bad example. And how could she ever raise a child by herself? She has to have a man with her. And you really should get married to the person that got you pregnant. Like you just had to. But I mean, if it was an abusive relationship, you maybe didn't have to, but probably should. Because I mean, it's better to be together.
Yeah, the concept of like spousal abuse kind of like wasn't really in the culture that I grew up in. Like it like wasn't possible almost.
No, and I seem to remember like asking something about that. Like, what happens if the man is abusive and something? It was like, well, the guys in the parish will take care of it, make sure it doesn't happen.
No,
it's like, that's not how that works.
No,
that's not how that works.
Yeah.
And even if, so what do you consider taking care of? Like, are they going to beat him up one Sunday outside of church in the parking lot and then expect it to be like over and done with, taken care of? He's like, oh, I didn't know I wasn't supposed to hit my wife. Like, that's not how that's going to work.
Thanks for letting me know.
And also, you're preaching every Sunday. Like, I remember different priests like saying, here's how you make sure your children sit through mass. My mom always would pinch my ear, or pull my hair, or do this stuff. And that really worked for us. So you should try it. And it's like, you're teaching the parents how to keep their kids in line, but also I'm supposed to follow my husband in everything unless it's a sin. So I know a lot of the women, if they had gotten slapped once or twice, it would have been, oh yeah, it was my fault. Of course, I shouldn't have done this or that. And you're bred and taught to do that.
Oh yeah.
And like, it wasn't until, like even somebody close to me was in a super abusive relationship, and he would like, they would like go out on a date and he would lock her in the car and yell at her for hours about stupid shit. Sorry. No, sorry. I was not happy. And I know abusive relationships happen everywhere, but it was just like this, so much like you were taught forever that if something's wrong, it's my fault because I didn't listen. I didn't do this or that right. And it's like, no, he shouldn't be locking you in the car, yelling at you because you didn't answer your phone because you were at work or something. And I know that happens everywhere else, but that relationship went on for so long because everybody who knew him, he was such a great guy. Nobody would ever believe me, or I just must be reading the situation wrong. It's not that big of a deal. And it was just stupid stuff like that, where it's like, there's not really any, like support system. If somebody had said, hey, yeah, I am getting abused, it would have just been like, oh, well, you have 7 kids. Sorry. Like, what are you going to do? We can't pay for you to raise your 7 kids. Cause of course you can't have a job and you don't have a career to fall back on. And even if you did, your kids are going to a secular daycare. That's not allowed either. And you would have to put them in public school. That's also horrible. And so it was just, I don't know. It's just like, they say that we have this community and you really don't. And especially as a woman, you don't. And if you made the wrong choice, you're stuck with it because you married him. So that's just all there is to it. There is never a reason for divorce, but there is a reason for separation. That was what I was told. And the only reason for separation is like extreme physical violence.
Like you will die.
Yes.
Like not even you'll just get hit around a little bit.
No.
But
And that's the weird, because like then later on, I don't know, I was like a teenager or something, and my mom had made a comment about like some news story or something, like somebody, it was some domestic violence situation, and she was like, well, what would you do if somebody hit you? I was like, I'm leaving, obviously, like,
and was that
I
the
would
wrong
leave.
answer?
She said like, oh, that's yeah, that's a good idea or something. And then, but it wasn't like if this happens to you, you have a place here. And I know I would, and I, like, my parents have since told me, and I think part of that was I married somebody who was outside, so like they didn't grow up with him, and now it's like you always have a place if you need a place to go, but I know there are families that weren't like that. I know that.
Yeah. The trad culture raises women to be victims. Like, and I don't mean like have a victim complex. I mean,
Yeah.
like, they raise women who can be victimized. Like, and I don't.
Well, you should be broken by the time you're marriage age anyway. You
That's
should
right.
already be trained to be perfect.
Yes.
And so you shouldn't, and like that's kind of the scariest part. And like I have a daughter, and so that's really what got me thinking a lot about this is like, okay, I mean, obviously getting married or getting pregnant as a teenager is not the best thing. However, I'm not going to sit there and pressure her to give it up for adoption because it would look bad on me to have a grandchild by a teenager. And just thinking about that and being like the level of shame that she would get for that, the level of shame that the entire family would get. And that's how you have women and girls pressured into abortion, is because they don't have any other way to get out. And then just all of the like the spankings and everything else just being expected, and your kids had better be quiet and sit through the entire 3-hour high mass every Sunday, and the hour plus long sermon, because the cry room only holds 15 to 20 people, and that's really only for like infants who don't know any better. And just like the level of complacency that's required from everybody is a big problem.
The way that trad culture works is that it both tells you that, like, obviously abortion is murder and that's not an option that's available to you. And then it seems to do everything that it can do to put women into a situation where abortion is the only way out. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and I find that so odd. Like, you would think that an organization that is so opposed to abortion would try to do more to actually stop abortions from happening, but they don't. And it's
but that's the problem, is you can't, because then if all of these silly girls see us lavishing all this attention and support on this unwed mother, then they're going to want the same, because they don't get attention and support otherwise. And so we can't set that precedent.
Jeez. And this is what so many people don't get when I explain to them like how I grew up, and you've been able to kind of put into words things that I've never been able to. I think in large part because I don't have,
because you didn't think you would ever say toe cleavage, and I got you to say it.
yes. OnlyTrads.com.
Yes.
But you've been able to put into words things that I haven't been able to put into words. I think in large part due to the fact that I don't have the lived experience of a woman who grew up in traditionalism. But I watched, my classmates and stuff like that who grew up this way. And like, I think I'm going to be able to refer to this episode for a long time in the future when I say things like, look, like, women had it worse than men did growing up trad, because at least like men had like agency. And I think that I haven't been doing a very good job of explaining that. Again, I'm trying to go easy on myself here. I don't have the lived experience, but I think I'm going to be able to refer to this episode as listen to this, because this is what it's like growing up the way that us few trads have grown up. I'm really glad that we did all the funny stuff first because we got heavy.
I can go back to funny. I've got tons of stuff.
Well, I'm also really glad though that we did the heavy stuff because like this is the stuff that people I think need to hear. And if I can kind of tie it back into that comment about like the Mormon stuff, the ex-Mormons seem to be doing a really good job of getting the word out there, like what it's like growing up, more like the dark side of Mormonism. There's not a whole lot of that on YouTube for traditional Catholicism, and I get it, right? We just don't have the numbers that the Mormons have. I get it, I do. But it's our experience is so similar to the Mormon experience. Obviously, they have additional scriptures that we don't have, right? But like in terms of just like having a high demand religion, it's similar.
Well, and the hypocrisy is annoying as well because the Mormons are so silly because they believe in all that stupid things like the magic underwear, but you're enrolled in the brown scapular at First Communion, and it's just put it on and you're blessed, and that's it. That's as far as you have to go, and nothing will ever happen to you if you're wearing it. That's right. Like we have, and I really appreciate the videos you did, the ones about the novenas and everything else, because it's like we have all this magic stuff too, but it's not looked at the same, and we're better than them because we have the real magic stuff. But it's not magic because magic is evil, right? And Harry Potter's the devil. But Lord of the Rings and Chronicles of Narnia is fine. But Harry Potter is evil because it has wizards, but the other ones have wizards. But we're not going to talk about that. And it's just all these little like slightly different, so they're bad type of things that didn't make sense.
It's in group, out group. It's when we do magic, it's fine, and it's not really magic. When you do magic, though, it's satanic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't know. So what you said about like the Mormons are the silly ones and stuff like that. We had an entire class like in our little because like I went to school in the basement of the church my grandparents founded, the FSSP church. We had an apologetics class where like literally all we did was like it was less of learning how to defend our faith and more about just like learning how to make fun of other religions. And so the magic underwear, that's exactly what we said. And like we also made fun of the Mormons for like, Joseph Smith looked into a hat and he had like a seeing stone or whatever. And like that's how he translated the golden plates. And isn't that
But here's all you missed. You better like almost idolize because they're so amazing.
Oh, and we didn't even talk about like the end of the world stuff. But like
it's happening. It's been happening at least 5 to 7 times since I've been growing up. But this time is really the real time.
Of course. And is your end of the world stuff all tied into like the Catholic mysticism as well? Because ours definitely was like Saint Maria Goretti said something about the end of the world or whatever. Well, actually for us it was all like La Salette. Like La Salette in particular was end of the world stuff.
I don't remember it being like that specific. It was always just like, oh, this thing is going to show this is like the collapse of the dollar. And so then that's going to take it down or,
like very secular.
No, it was always tied to secular something. It
really?
Wasn't like, these are the signs and symbols. It was just like, and I think a lot of it had to do with like, again, like I said, the crazy side that I was raised on. And so we had a whole bunch of those type of people. And it was just a lot of that. I would say it's like more like the economic kind of thing that really was the, I don't know what you want to call it, like the signs or the symbols that it was really the end of the times. I do know we had... Yeah, I know we had one priest who was into, I think it was called like the 3 Days of Darkness or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But I was super young when he was there, so I don't really remember what all was tied into that. I just know it was like got a whole bunch of people up into a tizzy.
Yep.
But also it was mostly the women who would get like super hysterical about it, so we don't really believe... About like some of the crazier ones, because there were a couple families that had like all girls and they were like kind of a little bit dramatic. And so you would kind of get like these people, and some guys too would be like, oh, I heard about this thing or that thing. And so this is really the sign. It's like, okay, but there have been people who are saying it's the end of times literally since as soon as Jesus died. So,
Yep.
but this is the time, guys.
Right. We got it this time, guys. This time for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's for us. I feel like, well, maybe it's just because I didn't talk to women.
You couldn't, and
I wasn't
really.
allowed.
I would applaud you for
Thank
staying
you.
away from that. That's very good of you.
Right. That's right. I'm just being a good, young man by avoiding all women.
Yeah.
But the men definitely talked about end of the world stuff, but it was like less, like secular stuff, like the collapse of the dollar, and it was more like
We're very preppy. It's very preppers.
We had preppers at our church, but like we weren't all preppers. Like my family in particular, like wasn't very prep-ish. Like I think the preppy-ish that my family got is I think my family stocked up on canned goods for like Y2K. Like,
see, I don't remember Y2K. I was too young. I don't
remember
for that.
it either.
Like,
I was born in '95, so I was
same.
Oh, look at that! We're the same age. That's cool. So we were 4 or 5 when Y2K happened.
Yeah,
I don't remember it, but I do remember my dad telling me like, yeah, he's like, I didn't really think it was gonna happen, but I was like, hey, why don't I just stock up on canned food just in case?
Yeah.
So, and that's about it. Like that's as bad as my family got with the preppy stuff. But we did have some prepper, like more serious preppers, like.
Yeah, I think a couple years ago they were trying to get like a garden set up at the church, like a huge
an end of the world garden.
Church, yeah, but the church is like it's getting bigger, and so there's no way on the amount of land that the church has. And then it was like, oh well, but then that's going to be a problem because some people can't drive to the church, once a week to tend to the garden or whatever. On top of, and you can't work on Sunday.
That's right.
You can't do your garden chores on Sunday. And so then it's going to be a problem because then we're going to have people who didn't do any work at all that are going to be trying to take, and you're like, okay, guys, like, I just don't get it.
Oh, I had a job like in high school and stuff, and I wasn't allowed to work Sundays for a really long time. And then I found a loophole where, did you know it's not servile work if you enjoy doing it? And so I just really wanted to work on Sundays because like the restaurant that I
wouldn't have flown.
I just told my parents, I'm like, no, I like it. Like I like working.
Yeah.
So it's not servile.
See, it was fine. We could go out to eat after church because you had to eat, obviously.
Oh, of course.
And we were only there for like 30 minutes to an hour. So there was plenty of time for the people that worked there to like get off and go to church. So that was fine.
True.
Yeah, that was another thing. I had almost a breakdown when I had a job that was like, it was at a hotel. So you're open 365. Right. And so it's like, no, you're required to work at least 2 holidays a year. And like, I had to work like Easter Sunday and Christmas because I was there a couple years. But it was fine because I was able, like my work schedule, I was able to make it to the vigil on both times. Okay. And I was in the choir. So I had to make it to the vigil both times. Yeah. So but it also was like, okay, it's required because some people are going to be traveling, and so they have to have somewhere to stay and they have to have food. So
fair.
It is okay if you absolutely have to.
Yeah.
But if it was like just at Walmart or something, absolutely not.
So I worked in a retirement home kitchen, and like some of us would get a hard time because it was like, well, the old folks can they can
have a sandwich.
Like, yeah, they can have cereal for one, like like they can have cereal on Christmas. Like they don't need to work.
But also, I thought we were supposed to be visiting and caring for the sick and the elderly.
Yeah, but not these sick and elderly because they weren't trad Catholics.
They weren't that bad.
Right,
okay.
Right. If they were trad Catholics, that's different. But these weren't trad Catholics, so
okay.
Who cares about
and really, if they were, they should have been in like a home that was run by nuns. That would have been fine.
No, they shouldn't have been in any home. They should have been in one of their 18 children's homes because that's your job, is to take care of your parents.
Obviously, I was talking about people who had never been blessed with children. Of course, everybody else would be in. Yes. Obviously.
Yeah. I know people who feel trapped, like they can't leave the area of the church because my parents, like this is just what we do, and yeah.
I had to move for a job. That was my excuse.
I mean, me
well,
too.
actually, I'd also told my husband we would be moving, but that was our excuse. Yes.
And here's something that we can probably end on. I think that one of the best things that somebody who grew up like us can do is move far away. What do you
Yeah.
think? Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, even just going, like the church we switched to in Oklahoma was 30 minutes away. Even that was such like a huge thing because then I wasn't surrounded by the same like clickiness. I mean, there were still like groups of at the other church that would like get together, but it wasn't the same.
Right.
It's not the same pressure of like, oh, they believe slightly differently on this thing that's totally allowable to be disagreed on by the church. The church even says we don't really have a say on this either way. But it's like, no, we decided that it's this way. So if they disagree, they're wrong. So we just don't talk to them, kind of thing. But yeah, I think moving away, even just 30 minutes, was big.
My thing about, and I'll be interested to get your thoughts here. Like my thing about it is this, like, if you're somebody who like, even if like you are like a firmly committed trad Catholic, you think that it's all true and all that stuff, move away. And if it is true, like you'll be convinced that it's true, like no matter what your geographical location is, right?
And that's the other thing is that debate was kind of like a huge thing. And like we had kids that were join like debate type clubs and that kind of thing, because you have to be able to, not espouse, like whatever. You have to be able to like accurately state the opposing side's arguments before you're actually able to debate, right? You should know the other arguments. But you really shouldn't look that far for ours because this is just the right side. Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I imagine that it was only the boys who were like doing this, right? Like the girls probably.
There were a couple that were like in Toastmasters in high school, but that was as far, like, obviously once you graduated, that was as far as you went.
Okay. Of course. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And Colin adds, as somebody who didn't move far away, it's not bad as long as you make space for yourself away from it.
Mm-hmm. I think that if you can do that, then that's fine. But for a lot, especially for the women, there is no community outside of that church.
And I'll even say that Colin hit on the point that really does matter is the making space. Like make space. However you have to make space and make that space. Moving far away though is just one really effective method of making space. But if you're able to make space without moving far away, that great. That's kind of.
And I think the moving away is more for like the people who really have people pleasing tendencies.
Yeah.
And if you can't hold that space or that line for yourself, having distance is a really big tool until you can actually learn and do that yourself. And that might just be like a gendered thing also, because I was not allowed to have those. I like if somebody asked me to do something, I had to do it. And like I specifically remember there's an older gentleman. I don't think that there was anything untoward about it, but he would always ask for a hug, or he would ask me to give him a kiss on the cheek. And when I was younger, I know I never liked doing it, but I had to do it. Right. And like looking back on that was another thing, is like, I don't want to raise my daughter that you have to do this because somebody wants you to do it. And like, I know that there was like when I was like in my teenage years, there was another guy there that was like super, super sketchy. And like just gave a lot of people really icky red flags and different things, but we couldn't ask him to leave because if he was told to leave by the priest, he wouldn't be allowed at any church in the state. And so it was, it was something to do with like, if you're officially asked to leave for, some type of reason like this, then you're not allowed at any parish that was allowed by the diocese. And so it was like a huge, like, we can't ask him to leave because technically he hasn't done anything. It's just lots of like really, but that goes back to like the men of the parish will take care of it. They should just be on the lookout. They should make sure nothing happens. And it's just like, okay, so as a girl or as a woman, I'm not allowed to feel safe even in my church. I have to find some guy to like Velcro onto to make sure that I stay safe if there's somebody there that's not good. But also, if I'm getting those kind of feelings that I need to avoid this person or this person isn't safe, I can't believe that myself. Like, I have to be told that that's okay by some guy.
And I don't know if you kind of found this, but I I find that like predators and groomers and stuff like that are attracted to, I'm not saying to trad Catholicism per se.
No, but those type of situations.
They're attracted to situations in which women are kind of like told from birth that like you just do whatever a man tells you. Why?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's, you know, like it's shooting fish in a barrel for a predator. And
Yes.
and you know, I think that's the same reason why the church had the priest scandal for, I mean, to some extent it's still there.
Okay, yeah. So there's a lot there because yes, in the catechism classes, it was always like, if you are sexually assaulted or raped, it was probably your fault because you're not following the modesty standards. Like, yes, there are a couple evil people out there, but also you should be like Saint Maria Goretti because she would rather die than let that happen. And so if you don't fight to the point of dying, I mean, you maybe wanted it, and also you probably caused it. Which, you know,
So
looking
stupid.
back now, the fight, flight, freeze responses, that's not talked about. It's fight. That's the only thing that you can do. If you freeze, then that's the wrong thing. So you obviously wanted it to happen, kind of thing. And again, like, huge caveat, this is just how I grew up with the people that I was around. And my parents never explicitly said that, but it was just kind of like, these are the people that we grew up around. And so it was like, if you chose those kind of people to be around your children and influencing them and letting them be around that, you're kind of saying it because you're not saying anything different.
It's like implicitly learned, kind of.
Yes. Yeah. And if you're supposed to believe them for everything else, then why wouldn't I believe them about that?
Yep.
And like purity culture is such like a huge umbrella that covers a lot of stuff. But I know there was this book that went around. It's called And the Bride Wore White by Dana Gresh, which she was a Protestant, but this was okay because we liked her message. And it's just a lot of the same thing.
Fundy Protestants were actually like more similar than trads.
There was
and
so much stuff. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, it's like Focus on the Family or something, put out tapes and stuff that were allowed, but they are totally like super Protestant.
Right.
But it's okay because we like some of their message. Yep. And the Abeka books and stuff. Like,
we used the Abeka books. Yeah.
Yeah. We did like, so that some of the families would do like the full Seton curriculum, mm-hmm. or the not St. Elizabeth. There was another one that was super popular, but then some people would just like piece together stuff. And so like my mom kind of did that. Like she liked the Abeka for like phonics and writing and that kind of thing. And then we did, is it Seton math or Sexton math or something like that?
Yeah.
And it was just like a, patchwork kind of thing. But like the purity culture thing, like that, I tried to find that book so I could reread it before this, but it was like a whole bunch of just like weird random stuff. Like again, with the, like the dressing rules and this kind of thing. And there was one line in there where she's like, if you look in the mirror and think that you look sexy, you need to get rid of that outfit. But I'm like, what would I know? Like, as somebody, as a teenager who's never been taught what sexy is, like, right. Feeling good in a dress was like, oh, that must be sexy. Like that's bad. And there was a part in that book. Okay, I'm gonna put a disclaimer because it's been like I haven't read the book since I was like 15. I am pretty sure there's a spot in the book where she apologizes to her teenage son that she wasn't a virgin when she married his dad. Now, like I said, disclaimer, because I can't point to it, but I'm pretty sure that was in there or in one of those other like purity culture books. But yeah, it's like you're not your own person. You're tied into what you can do for your husband and your sons. You don't even know what to say.
So, and hold on. If you get pregnant the very first time that you have sex, then mm-hmm. your first son will have had a mom who was a virgin. But mm-hmm. guess what? All your kids after that are going to be born to somebody who's not a virgin. Like, what's...
No, she wasn't. And she didn't lose her virginity to his dad. That was the problem. She had it with a boyfriend. Mm-hmm.
God forbid. God
yes.
forbid.
Yes. Yeah.
Jeez.
And And in that book also there's like this part where you're supposed to like write a wish list for what your perfect guy is going to be. And so of course as a 12-year-old it's always like, oh, he has to be this tall or his hair should be this color, or, and if, I mean obviously you wouldn't put Catholic on the list because you're not going to go anywhere,
right.
obviously.
Right.
Yes. And so it's just a whole bunch of like these ridiculous things that have no bearing on what an actual relationship is.
Mm-hmm.
And I know women who had written this list as a teenager that were then like, oh, well, he's not the right height. So like everything, like, I just really don't know. I don't know if I can respect a man who's younger than me. And it's like, younger than you by like 2 months.
That was the thing in like the expectation that the man should be older than the woman was very strong. And like, it's okay as long as you're older at all, but like realistically it probably should be like at least like 2 years older probably was like
but no older than 5 to 7.
I don't know. We had some like 10-year
no.
differences.
If you're over 25, then you can kind of fudge the numbers.
Yes.
If you're younger than 25, anything older than 5 to 7 years older is obviously a pedophile, because when he was 18, you would have been under puberty. So if he showed up, that would have been pedophile.
Yes.
So,
but
no.
like, let's say that there was like a spinster who was like wasting away into her old age. Let's say that she was the ripe old age.
If she found somebody who was going to be so charitable as to marry her, then yes, she shouldn't be picky.
Imagine that she was ancient and like she was 28, for instance. Let's just imagine, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And there was like a 40-year-old man who was the perfect man, and just he was fantastic. He just had never married, and then he took pity on her and he married. That's great.
Well, and obviously that's also amazing on his part, because he would be okay with possibly adopting if she's unable to have children.
Yes, because she's so old.
But also, well, and you can't know if you have fertility issues beforehand, because if you go into marriage knowing that you're infertile, then you can't get married, because obviously you can't fulfill the purpose of marriage.
That's right. Yeah. Which it's like so it's so cruel, right? It's so cruel to people with fertility issues, like. Because of course you can't get inseminated or anything like that. You can't.
No, and also really you shouldn't go more than 3 months past your marriage before you get pregnant, because otherwise then we're going to start having questions.
That's right.
But also you can't really look into it, because of course if the problem's on the man's side, you wouldn't know unless of course he masturbated and got it checked, and that you can't do that either. So
do you know about
if it's not a woman's problem, you don't know what it is? Huh?
Do you know about the condoms with the holes poked into them? Have you heard about this?
We didn't know condoms were a thing, Kevin.
Well, no,
what kind of evil were you around?
No. So this is illicit. This is illicit. So if an orthodoxly Catholic man has suspicions that he has fertility issues, the way that you confirm that is by getting your sperm checked. And like, there's no licit way for you to
do that,
collect your sperm, right? So, well, so there is, and that's with like. It's essentially like a perforated condom. It's like a condom that lets a little bit through. So technically, the possibility.
Technically, you could possibly almost maybe.
Yeah, you could still maybe get pregnant, but it catches enough of the sperm that you can then give it to the doctor and be like, "Can you please check my sperm count, please?" But like, it's just.
But also, but see, that doesn't work either, because then maybe the sperm that was meant to fertilize that egg was still caught behind, so then that doesn't count.
Well, now you're thinking about it. And that's a problem, because number one, you're a woman. And
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
No, but that is a real. I promise to you that like the perforated condom is a real like technique. It's like the only licit way for a Catholic man who thinks that he might be having fertility issues on his own side, like to get his sperm checked. That's the only licit way. Is go have sex with your wife wearing this like special perforated condom that catches enough, but not all of it, because that's the only way that it's licit. Which it's just so crazy.
Well, and okay, so I know some families did like sex act talks, but most did not. And, it was really weird finding out that as a woman, there's only like, 5 to 7 days where I can actually get pregnant during the month. And so that was, kind of a mind fuck.
An embarrassingly long time. I did not know that.
Yeah. And so like, once you think about it, you're like, okay, so wait a second, I can't do anything. Because if I'm supposed to get, like, I can't do anything without the possibility of getting pregnant, right? Okay, so I can't do condoms or any type of birth control or anything like that. Because if God really wants me pregnant, he can't make me pregnant. Like,
right. It's so silly that like NFP is okay.
no, absolutely not. No,
Oh,
and
was your
no. The
chapel
only
not okay
time,
with NFP?
no. The only time is maybe if it is literally life or death for the woman. Maybe. And even then,
Wow.
you really should be like Saint Gianna Mala, because she found out she had cancer after she found out she was pregnant. And she ended up dying like 6 days after her baby was born, which she was my confirmation saint, of course. But like, even so yeah, there's a lot of families where like the kids are back to back to back to back, and it's really hard. I have it's like almost a 2.5 year difference in between my kids. And it wasn't planned. It was just, that's how it was. And like, even that, it's easier than having Irish twins, I'm sure. But I am sure if I was still going to that parish, there would have been like a lot of talk, like, oh, is she actually like trying to space out her kids? Like, mine happened because my husband worked away. And so it's just, the timing was never right. But there still would have been those questions, and it still would have been like, oh, are you not able to have more kids? Or like, why are you waiting? What's going on? Kind of thing. And like I said, even if you go like a couple months past your wedding and you're not pregnant, there's all sorts of gossip behind your back, and it's going to happen. And gossiping is evil, but we can talk about it as a concern.
Gossip is like the one thing that it's like, well, it's wrong, but we're all going to do it anyway, kind of like. But yeah. I'm pretty sure that my chapel's stance on NFP was like, it's okay as long as you're using it, not to never have kids, of course, but like let's say that like it's just you and your husband are both young, and obviously you're not working and your husband is working, but he's only making he's not making
that's not a reason. Finances are not a reason either.
Interesting. So I think that my chapel would say it's okay to space out kids using NFP for financial reasons. I think
medical only. And like, because you really should just be giving your finances over to God, and you really should be doing a better job. If you're not making enough money for your family, you just need to be doing better. And yeah, like I said, medical was really the only reason. And like I said, that I grew up on like the really crazy strict side. So maybe somebody else had a different, but like that was never ever talked about at all. And it was just always like, oh, well, this kind of thing came in like kind of with Vatican II, like a little bit different, like different timing, but it's like the same thing. Like the church never taught this before, so we're just not going to believe it. And exactly. And that caused like so many issues, because you can't talk about it either once it happens. And you have, like in my circle, I know I have a lot of women who hate it or hate having sex. And it's just like, you have to. We don't talk about it, and so it's just like passing comments, and so like you kind of guess, like I'm pretty sure that's kind of how you feel. And so then like if you run into any issues, you can't talk to anybody about it. You can't, and of course you don't know either, so you can't say like, okay, wait a second, like does it get any better than this? Is there something I could do at all? And then you're stuck in this place of like, okay, so is like foreplay wrong? Is like lube wrong? I know toys are right out. You absolutely can't have anything.
Right.
As one priest said, because once a woman like gets used to a toy, then her husband can obviously never match up. So then she's going to be, stuck with a toy. So
because
you just obviously
are so
can't.
knowledgeable about, right?
Because we should be asking somebody who went straight from high school into the seminary. You probably shouldn't, like, you could maybe have dated, but you probably shouldn't. And so then you have to ask them about all of your marriage issues or children issues and all of these other things. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Have you seen the movie? So I just watched it for the first time in a long time last night. Gran Torino.
I watched it a long time ago, but I kind of know.
The old guy, I forget his name, but he says to the priest, he calls him like an overeducated 27-year-old virgin who likes to hold the hands of superstitious old women or something like that. Mm-hmm. And it's a good movie though. Yeah. And like it actually winds up painting the Catholic Church and the priest in particular, like in a good light by the end of the movie.
Oh yeah, that was a good movie. And like there were certain movies that were okay. But the banned books list was kind of still talked about as a thing. And there was like was a huge problem with the like the choir director, and she wanted to make sure everything was like on the major approved list to be sung in a church. And like, yeah, there was one priest that I really liked. He was like, he spoke several languages, like super into music, super smart guy, and he would like sing with the choir sometimes. And he made a passing comment about one of the Christmas carols, because like before the vigil mass for Christmas, we would always do like 30 minutes of approved carols. And he made like a passing comment. I was like, oh, well, the music for this one was written by a Protestant, but the words are like Catholic. And it disappeared. It was not on the list anymore after that. And he wasn't even saying you couldn't. He was just like, oh, yeah, by the way, this was written by a Protestant.
Wow, that's wild. Jeez.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And obviously nothing other than an organ, of course.
Oh, no, of course. We were the same way, nothing but an organ. But I'm so sorry. I have to pull up this comment from Anton real quick. So, do you know Father Ripper?
I have heard of him, and I hadn't specifically heard of that because we can't talk about that. That's just inappropriate completely.
Yeah, right. Can't even talk about it.
And also completely ignores, how females are built, but we're not going to talk about that.
Yeah, Anton says, has this guy even taken a biology class?
No, you can't.
Yeah.
And if you did, those pages were glued together.
Oh, we had a biology.
I'm sure.
We had a somebody had taken a permanent marker and like Sharpied over everything that we're not allowed to know about and stuff.
You see, I grew up on a farm, so I was just supposed to catch all that,
Oh.
But also, I probably shouldn't know about it, so.
Jeez. Well, Rebecca, I've kept you for almost 2 hours now, and I've been thoroughly enjoying this, but I do imagine that we should let our viewers go home eventually. So let me kind of ask you one final question of just, is there any kind of note that you would like to leave us with? Any kind of final thoughts that you wanted to add before I have you on next time, where we will continue talking about OnlyTrads?
Okay, perfect. I better go, reserve that now. Yes. That domain name. I guess it would probably be it's insanely scary to even think about asking the question, even of yourself, if you actually believe it, but just do. And even if it doesn't lead you anywhere, or it leads you back to nope, yep, this is actually it, just make sure you believe it for yourself, and don't believe it just because you're supposed to, and don't get married just because you're supposed to, or have kids just because you're supposed to. That's not a good way for anybody to live. So just ask the question, even if it's in your own head. Ask
the question. I think that's a great place to end it. Rebecca, this has been awesome. This was the most fun I've had in a while. Thank you so much for coming on. I think I started the show by saying that you were helping me with my biggest critique about my show, which was not having enough women who grew up trad on here. So I would just like to kind of end the show on the same note, just a note of thanks. Thank you so much for coming on, for sharing your story. Towards the beginning, let me pull up one more comment. Anthony said, thank you for sharing your truth. And I just want to kind of echo Anthony's comment. Thank you for sharing your truth.
Is that the Anthony that you had interviewed?
Yes, it is.
Okay, because how I actually found you was I found Anthony on the Cult of Consciousness, and I didn't watch it for weeks because I was like, oh, I heard he's talking about the traditionals. I can't listen to that because that's evil. And then he said just that he was with Father Wolf, and I would remember the Father Wolf thing being super culty, and his CDs would be passed around, and he was a traveling, we better go visit him whenever he traveled and all that. And so then I finally watched it, and then he said something about the James Jackson thing, which I was not aware of, which a lot of people that were very close to me were very close to him, and they just never thought to talk about it with me anyway. So then I did a deep dive on that, and then I found him on you, and that's how we got here. So good. Thank you, Anthony, for all of that.
Well, I'm really glad I pulled up Anthony's comment then. But this was awesome. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
And
it's been fun.
We can find you at OnlyTrads.com. Is that right?
You can find my feet. How about that?
Yes, your toe cleavage.
And maybe my elbows. But that's as far as we go.
Okay, of course. This is only trads we're talking
Yes,
about here.
obviously.
Of course.
Yes.
Rebecca, this was awesome. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Until next time.
All right.